imagine. Today, my guests are all dressed up, looking so good, and for a moment I'm thinking, will they bring out the layman's language? But all the same, we'd want to trust all of them to make sure that we get to understand proper on the subject of the day, filing individual tax, or better yet, you ask yourself just how important it is to make sure that you file your annual returns. And it is that time where kila siku you look at the television and you're reminded that you're supposed to file your returns. You look at your emails and boom, KRA is there. Make sure you file your returns. And sometimes, you have so much grace period, but, eventually time lapses before you have done that. What could be informing this? That's how we get to understand and just how best we make it easy, for you to get to know how best you can file your returns. You don't necessarily have to go to the cyber, and I'm not trying to say usiwapatie biashara. If you can, please proceed and give them the business. You don't necessarily have to find your way all the way to the KRA offices at this point of COVID-19. You also do not want to go there and queue. You don't necessarily have to have struggles to a point whereby you do not file your returns. We're going to make it as easy as ABC alongside my guests this morning, just so you are not left behind. Wanja Wangondu is joining us this morning, an official from the Domestic Tax Department, KRA, and we also have Edwin Thiongo, our very own tax lawyer. We had him last week. He did a commendable job. We certainly hope that we also get the same today. And we also have a new face from KCK, Geoffrey, right? This one here is a tongue twister, and so you'll allow me to mention it the way I will do it. And the others are laughing at me as though they would easily pronounce that. I'm sure they would not. Nyamayeria. I got it right. Correct. Karibu sana, he's a tax consultant. And we get to the conversation. Good to have you this morning. We all get scared at this point. When I got my message from KRA and I was like, wamekuja tena. It is that time that I have to, file my returns. Last year I did, sijisemi hapa, and honestly, they still send me that message to remind me that I owe them. I still do not understand how I owe them. I tried my level best to file my returns, but somewhere in between, it just did not work. Especially with this withholding tax and all these conversations, I am lost. Edwin, I know you want me to engage the official from KRA, but I'll start with you. Why is it always that it appears as though it's quite a tough one to even imagine of filing your own taxes?
Thank you, Linda, for having us this morning. I think on my part, tax filing is a culture, and I think it's a culture that we are slowly getting into. And I think progressively, people are changing their mentalities about filing taxes. Previously, the taxman was an enemy. Yes. And those are the days when people would rather do anything than file taxes.
You think he's still not an enemy?
I think progressively we have demystified that the taxman is not really an enemy.
Yeah.
And I think the change of culture in terms of trying to understand that filing taxes is for our own good. And I think why it's difficult, it's because we are still coming from that culture where tax was a bad thing and was an evil thing. But I think progressively, as we become more aware, I think we're going to get to a place where filing taxes is very easy. I think secondly, we are coming from a place where filing taxes was a complex affair. Remember those days you had to queue in your domestic tax station, then you queue the whole day. Then even after queuing that day, you will not be able to file your taxes. You have to come the next and the next day. And I think associating tax with that hassle has made a lot of people think of it as a negative thing. Well, I think with the new ways of filing taxes, with the iTax platform, with the Commissioner's Office becoming more reachable, by and large, we'll get to a place where it's easy.
All right.
I'm not saying we are there yet, but we have a long way to go, but the culture has to keep changing.
In my own view, I'd say we're not there yet, but then we'll be having, I know she's a lady, but we'll call her the taxman, to tell us, based on the numbers that we have, the biggest question or the first question that would be going to her is just the comparison of what played out last year, in terms of numbers by 30th of June 2020, whether she would confidently say that indeed the taxes were filed, or a majority of the people they expected to file their taxes, whether they did the same. But before we engage her, let's come to you, Geoffrey. Why is it that it's quite a nightmare when we think of filing tax, however important, or in as much as it's quite important? We were talking to one career whom we'll listen to later on, and the conversation in there is that whether you have all these questions or not, eventually you have to file your tax. We honestly do not want to get to that point.
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate. And thank you to the fellow panel guys.
Yeah.
For the longest time, we've had taxes.
Right.
From ancient days. But then filing returns is just an assurance, or rather, we always get, okay, assuming you're employed. So your employer deducts pay from your pay each and every month, and then remits to KRA. So what the taxman wants at the end of the day, like at the end of the year, is for you to just affirm. I wish she could just affirm that. It's just an affirmation that last year, this is the income that I had gotten, and these are my expenses, and these are the taxes that I paid. Apart from that, that in a nutshell is what we call filing my tax returns. Yes.
Okay, you know, and the taxman has really had to bear the brunt of what it is that the government has failed to do. Because when we think of our taxes and we realize that we probably do not have much of value for money, then we just look at KRA as an animal. We just look at KRA as a person who's taken money from us, but they're not giving us value for their money. Probably she'll tell us that that is not their role. Theirs is just to collect, and then the rest should be done by the government. So Wanja, as you come in, first we ask in terms of the numbers, how many taxpayers filed their annual returns 30th July 2020? That is one crucial thing that many would want to ask, but I'm told we're still not able to get a hold of the audio of Wanja, and so we will get to loop her in regards to the same. We need to probably save the taxman for a moment and make Kenyans understand that while KRA collects this from us, it's not necessarily that it's them that are going to ensure that we get value of this money that has been collected. And I'll tell you for free that one of the reasons why Kenyans run away from this and they hate to even hear anything to do with tax is because in most cases they tend to feel like they have not really received value for their money, and so much has really been taken away from them. What makes it different in terms of the monies that you will give a different amount, he will give a different amount, I will give a different amount, just to get to understand that. And then when we start saying that it's expensive, then at least we shift the blame to a different angle that is in the government.
Well, I think first that when you think about taxes, and we said last time that tax works on a principle of voluntariness. And I said that if you look at how we file our tax returns, I think more over 90%, 95% of the tax returns filed are voluntary. That means people are filing them out of their own volition.
Okay.
But then to match this voluntariness in taxes, then there must be reciprocity, where we say that when I give out my money in taxes, then the government owes me an irreducible level of services. Now, sometimes it's hard for us to marry the two, because sometimes government spending and strategies and planning is different from how the local person would feel it. For example, the government decides to spend on infrastructure. Right now we might say the infrastructure is not essentially important, because how can we be building roads and people are hungry? But the government is forecasting that to get us to a place where we're able to be called a developed state, there are certain things that we need to do right now, and sometimes the sacrifice is borne by those who are currently paying taxes. Now, in terms of spreading the tax burden, the commissioner has been trying at great lengths to bring more people into the tax bracket. If you look at all the new taxes that have come up, from the turnover taxes, from the presumptive taxes, from the minimum tax, all these taxes are to expand the tax bracket, so that there are more of us sharing this burden of development, of government spending, as opposed to a few who are paying a lot more than they should. Then to determine how that is spread across different people, it's the type of income you're filing with. And I think in the next session we'll discuss how different incomes determine different rates of taxes, and how that, and what that means from an expense point of view, from a cost point of view.
Okay.
And maybe the last thing on to not to defend the commissioner, but to just maybe clarify, when it comes to collection of taxes, the commissioner is playing a simplistic role of collecting. In terms of allocating and budgeting, it is Treasury that does that. So I think sometimes the conversation has to be taken a bit back to Treasury and ask, okay, we have collected this much. what is being done with it, and that's where we should start in terms of holding the government accountable. It should start that far. But the commissioner, of course, being the messenger, is
Should not be
likely to be short.
And the commissioner is here. Tell us, in terms of numbers, in comparison to probably what we are expecting, or in comparison to the previous years, just how many Kenyans were able to file their tax returns, that is in 30th June 2020, and whether this has exhibited some level of progress in the belief and that urge to go out there and be in good books with the taxpayer, with the of course tax body.
Okay. Now by June last year, by 30th June last year, we had 4.4 million persons who had filed. And I wish to report by yesterday we had about 2 million. And so this is a good progress.
Okay.
And this year we are targeting to receive about 6 million. And we know we will achieve it. The good thing, there is a program that's in place this year, that is the voluntary tax disclosure program.
Right.
That a number of people who maybe had not filed for a number of years and they were worried that if we come out, we'll have hefty penalties and interest. Now have a window to take advantage where they'll be waived for the interest and penalty. So by that alone, though it's for the prior period, we are foreseeing many who are coming out, and when they come out now, even the current returns, they're actually abiding by the requirements of the current ones.
All right.
So we will see a great improvement this year.
All right, and now that the gentleman had time to speak, let me ask the second question. Just what new technological developments or deployments do we have on board, as implemented or as brought on board by KRA, to make sure that they facilitate the annual tax returns filing exercise this year? Because then it's quite, like I said, started by saying it's quite hectic to even imagine that you can just easily file your returns.
Okay. One of the main things that we are out to do is to simplify our processes. And as it is now, you can comfortably file your turnover tax, your rental income, and all nil returns through your phone, where we have simplified the whole process. A process that was taking 6 steps is now taking 3 steps.
Okay.
So that's one of the key things that we are doing, simplifying and ensuring that not only do we simplify the systems, but we also simplify even the law.
All right.
Whereby we ensure that a common mwananchi is able to understand the law. We interpret it in a simplified manner or in a simplified way. Another thing we have done this year is that we are checking on our servers to ensure that even the last day, even if we'll have a big number of people who will be coming up to the last day, though I highly encourage all Kenyans, let's come out as early as now. Be among the number that's being counted, be among the 2 million, about the 2 million that we are talking about. Let's file now. But we have put measures in place that even up to the last day, we'll be able to take care of that person. Also, there are those persons who are a bit elderly, and maybe at this point they're saying, I am not comfortable leaving my house. We have provided phone numbers where they call, they're given emails that they are able to send their materials and assistance.
Okay.
They get assistance from the comfort of their homes. So those are some of the issues that we are working on, but more so the simplification process. We want in a year's time, we will have simplified the returns, we'll have simplified the systems, and every common mwananchi will be able to file as they're able to file turnover tax and the rental income through their phone.
I'm not letting go of you. I'm glad this is the last segment, and so once we're done, we cross over to the other side, go to my computer so you can help me file mine. Geoffrey, I know this we'll delve deep into after, that is in regards to just understanding the types of incomes and how the operations and how they form the numerous forms of taxes that we have on board. But just who is required to file a tax return? When we're speaking about this deadline of June 30th, whom are we looking at, or whom are we referring to? Because most of these people, while we say we perish because of lack of knowledge, in reality they are genuine. They honestly do not know whether they should or not.
Ideally, every Kenyan of age that has a PIN number is supposed to file their tax returns.
Even if you've had nil?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter whether you earned an income or not. I think at some point I've seen questions of individuals who've gotten a PIN just to get the help money from help. These are guys who probably are in university and they're actually not earning an income, because help is not an income, it's actually just a facilitation. So even the guys that are doing that are supposed to file nil.
And if you don't, there's a penalty?
Yes, there is. For individuals,
there is
a penalty.
I mean, don't you think that is unfair, honestly?
She's here.
She should be able to answer that, honestly. Why? That is unfair, for crying out loud.
Okay, let's look at it from this angle.
Okay.
You and I were in universities a few years ago.
Yes.
Did
we was financed.
We were financed through help.
Yes.
And a number of us were using the help money to do business. So what I wish to state is, by the fact that somebody is a student does not mean they don't have incomes. And so you also notice even somebody who, maybe there's somebody who lost their job last year.
Yes.
And so they didn't have an income last year.
Yeah.
So the filing comes in to do a declaration or to tell the commissioner, these were my incomes. So the student who has those incomes is coming in and saying, yes, I have this business income. Yes, I have this investment income.
Yes.
All I didn't have, just as any other person who may be having other incomes. And so, but plans are, we are looking into it to see, since our law states there are some transactions that you need a PIN for, whether you have an income or not. Like, for example, if you want to install electricity meters, if you want to start a business and you want to pay for the license, a PIN is a requirement. If you want to open a bank account, a PIN is a requirement as well.
All right.
So we are working on to it to see how are we able to separate fully that person who doesn't have income completely. And by the way, like for the elderly who just need a PIN to open a bank account, maybe to receive the money that they get from the government, for them, plans are other way. There are those people who who get some stipends from the government, the elderly. For those ones, plans are other way. In fact, the law specifically says that for a person who will not be having any taxable income, there's a way that we facilitate them to get their services without getting a PIN.
All right, and I'm here to
they can open a bank account.
I am not here to fire shots at KRA. I'm just simply raising concerns that most of the Kenyans would. And back to you, Geoffrey, before we loop in Edwin. I don't know how much, or whether as a Kenyan you are confident that there's so much information out here. Probably you might be knowing so much because then you're in this world of tax. But do you suppose there's been proper civic education that has been conducted to get the Kenyans to understand this? If my memory serves me right, the first time I took my PIN number, one, it was rocket science. I was just doing this for formalities because I was asked for. And nobody sat me down when I was being awarded that paper to be told that, you know what, once you get this, this and this is what it is that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to file returns every year. I can almost tell you this, that we get the PIN numbers for the sake of doing it with zero knowledge of what one needs to do.
I wouldn't say that KRA hasn't done a lot of sensitization.
Right.
If you look at, they have several YouTube videos.
Okay.
Ushuru story. Is that
Right.
Stories of Ushuru.
Yeah, stories of Ushuru. They have a lot of videos, but it's, I think lately, but initially, I don't think KRA had done that, but lately we're getting a lot of information why you should file your tax returns, what is PAYE, what is turnover tax, minimum tax, and lately they've so much gotten into radios and all that, talking about digital tax and all that. Though, that aside, I think when you're going to get your PIN number, I think KRA needs to enlighten you, because they get a lot of they get to penalize individuals who just opened a business. An individual who started a business and let's say a maize vending business and all that, and then they are like, you need a PIN for you to open a bank account. So this individual just knows that for me, the PIN was a prerequisite for me to open an account.
Yeah.
But ideally doesn't know that when you deal with vatable goods, then you're supposed to be filing your tax returns on a monthly basis. You understand?
Yeah.
That KRA, I think, hasn't done that. It's supposed to be when you're going for your PIN number, that information needs to be extremely clear.
Yes.
That these are what you expected on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, and all that.
Wanja, free information there. Let's have Edwin. Let's first Edwin come. Let's have first Edwin come in, and then unless it will distract your line of thoughts or you make it.
It was just a question to him.
Please ask
I just wanted to find out in the last 2 years.
Yes.
Do you have anyone who has added an obligation, and did they receive anything in their email? Because we have actually changed the process in a way. When you apply for your PIN and when you add an obligation, in addition, you get an onboarding message that tells you about the given obligation. But as you have stated, the prior years, I admit for sure, we are not, it was actually a manual system. So it was only, we print for you the card. And it's either we give you the information at that point, because then even emails were not in use.
Yes, but even now we also acknowledge the fact that we're not fully digitized, honestly. We're not fully to that level. And I can tell you, even these small kids that are, come from, from Form 4, they get into driving classes and all this, are probably not so much inclined into this email world. And so...
And SMS, we are doing an SMS, and we are doing an email.
All right, okay. Let's be fair briefly in 2 minutes and allow Edwin come in now that we put her on the wing for a while. Edwin, some Kenyans with employment income find the call for filing returns or the annual returns, repetitive, because they say this exercise has already been done by the employers, and therefore, why do you take us through this process again? Kindly enlighten us on this. Just how important is it for it to get to that individual level?
So first I'll say that, and I said last time that the PIN is the property of the commissioner. So we file returns. Actually, filing a return is not paying taxes. There's a big difference. Filing returns is simply a declaration. What have I done with my PIN this year? What have I done with my PIN the previous year? You're supposed to be accounting whether you have made any income or not. So if you're running, if you're in employment, of course, there is the pay as you earn, which is a monthly tax, which is paid as an advance tax on employment. So what the commissioner requires you at the end of the year is to come and say, up and above what has been paid by my employer. And the employer will give you a P9 to prove what they have deducted in advance. Have I made any additional income apart from employment income? And as such, you're supposed to be filing your tax at the end of the year to declare any additional income that you have, save from the employment income that that has already been deducted. And therefore, Kenyans should not feel it's a repetitive task. If you look at what the Tax Procedures Act says, it says that the PIN granted to an individual cannot be used by anyone else. It means that even your employer cannot declare the returns for you. They can only deduct and put it in your PIN, but you have a responsibility to go and say, it is my PIN, I have come to declare my returns. This is a much I owe, and this much is already with you, and this extra I have earned through my farming business, through my side hustle, through my work. Then you're facilitated to file that tax. And therefore, it's not repetitive when you say you're filing tax again, because the employer has not done any declaration. They've only made a payment of the taxes at source. You're supposed to declare it at the end of the year. So it's not repetitive, and Kenyans should be encouraged to look at it as a personal obligation. I think that's why it's called a personal identification number.
Yes.
It would have been called a group identification number, they would say.
Or an employment one, so at least that we bring on board. Okay, well, as we promised, Business with KCK will be focusing much on equally having a session with the common wananchi, and therefore today we spoke with a career, and shares his experience, and then out of careers experience we also get to learn some of these things. So we want to see what it is that we had in store alongside career, but that should be after this short break, and we expound some more on the conversation.
Munisikize. Kwanza nataka kusema jambo moja. Tumepata mgeni ambaye anaitwa Beatrice, ameingia kwenye kikundi hiki. Mnafurahia? Huyu ndio dada Beatrice. Japo kwa kuna mama tu mmoja anaitwa What? Elvis, come here.
Washer Ultra Detergent, unlike your ordinary washing powder, is formulated with 3D enzyme action designed to remove stain, kill germs, and make your laundry super clean. With ultra concentration for that one handful wash, plus a smooth fragrance to put a smile on your face.
Kuna uchafu kwenye nguo zangu, ninashindwa nitafanya vipi? Kuna suluhisho moja ya ajabu, na ni nini kama si washa?
Hey, baby. I thought leo ni chama. Nini inaendelea?
Washa Ultra ina nguvu mara tatu ya kupambana na kila uchafu. Washa Ultra ni sabuni ya ajabu. Sisi sote tung'are na Washa.
Washer Ultra. Happy hands, happy clothes.
At Global Precast Panels, we have the best quality, durable, and affordable precast panels to suit all your needs. Manufactured under a controlled environment, we have the best precast concrete panels, precast concrete floor slabs, precast concrete perimeter wall, precast concrete columns, and beams. Our panels reduce construction cost by up to 40% with absolutely no plaster required, including added soundproof benefits. Convenient for story buildings, schools, offices, residential houses, hospitals, and warehouses. Take advantage of our free transport. Contact us on 0702 24 7267 or 0796 24 7267. Global Precast Panels Limited, your reliable option for efficient construction.
These are the sights and sounds of a working nation. There are no shortages to remarkable ideas. What's missing is the will to execute them.
You need to stay relevant. If you don't, you're going to fade off.
Yes, they are a dime in a dozen, but the real meat on these bones comes from trying to realize them.
We just need to perfect anything. If it's drawing, if it's music, pursue it 100% because it's something that is giving back.
Join me, Violet Njoki, as I tell you the stories of these executed ideas, because yours could be next. Mondays, 7:30 p.m.
Hey, now that's hitting the right notes. When life gets boring, we bring out our play. You see, playfulness is in our
this
DNA.
person is none other than Geoffrey Nyamayeria, who's equally a tax consultant. So we get back to you, Geoffrey. How far are we?
We were at employment income, and like I said, this year's tax returns are different because now we have two segments. You notice here that they've said January to March income, so we had to divide it into two. Notice what we have under Corel here is what we will get the income for this for these 3 months, which is 255. So we input the income. What was the pension for those 3 months? That's 200 times 3 at 600. Then you get the other income and the pension on the same level. Okay. So apart from this is actually what changed this year. The previous years only had income. Okay, so because it's January to December and there were no disparities on that. So then you will move to what you paid as payee. So who paid you, the PIN of the payer. I'm assuming that this is just a PIN number that I picked. I hope it's not someone that is watching right now. And then we have TAC, which has paid Corel and all that. And then ultimately this is what Corel paid at the end of the year. If he had paid installment tax, then you can deduct from this level. If he had any withholding tax, then he would pay from there and all that. So we move to the computation. Okay. Notice that we had said Corel had a wife.
Yes.
Right. So under tax computation, there's a place here I had inserted under employment income. So there's Corel up here and there's the wife down here. Okay. So this is a scenario whereby Corel is actually filing tax returns on behalf of the wife.
Okay.
So you will insert your incomes, employment income up here, and then come down here and insert your wife's employment income. So at the end of the day, like we said when we started, there is no benefit of filing per se for filing for your wife, or there's no relief you're gonna get because all these taxes were calculated on a monthly basis through the graduated scales. So which means that both of them had a relief. Notice that both of them had a release. And now, so the tax that is going to be pegged here, remember that the employment income tax is paid on a monthly basis, which means at the end of the year, then Corel doesn't have any liability. But since Corel had this other income, you will notice that Corel is going to have to pay a tax on it. Okay? Why is it a negative? There was supposed to be 164 something.
Not a negative?
Yeah, it's not supposed to be a negative.
Okay.
So from whatever he earned, that is 290, 400, is going to be there's going to be a graduated scale, and he's going to be taxed on that. Okay.
Yes.
The other model is where Corel doesn't have this business, and ultimately the tax liability under this is going to be zero, since they've already paid that on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. So we probably might not need to go through that, so that at least we save time and engage the rest of the guests that we have this morning. There's a point where you mentioned something to do with claims. I need to understand what claims we're talking about here. I remember there's that time that I was really excited. Well, the very first times that you're filing your tax, and this person who's helping you go through tells you know what, wanaku sijui 8,000 bob. So you're like, are they going to bring it to give it to me and everything? And they tell you yes, there are times that when you claim you definitely get that, but it's quite a hectic tax or task. Do you people do that? Do you get claims and do you give back the money? Do you?
Wow. Tax man give refunds.
You owe me, and again you're telling me that I owe you 2,000 bob. So I'm wondering, who was the other, honestly, because whatever it is that you owe me is more than what it is that I owe you.
Okay. Let me first state, in the year 2018, 2019, we gave refunds of 14 billion.
Oh, yeah?
Last year, 2019, 2020, we gave refunds of 25 billion.
Maybe I should ask, what do I need to do to get the refund? Probably I should have started by asking that.
So that's a clear indication that the taxman gives or pays refunds.
Okay.
Now, let's now come and ask what is required. What I've noted with many individuals is that when we file our returns and we find ourselves in a credit position, we automatically assume and sit and wait for the money to hit our bank account.
Right.
Now, the taxman waits for your guidance, and your guidance is applying for the tax refund.
Okay.
So, the first thing, have you applied for that tax refund in iTax? So you need to go to
You should see how Edwin is looking at me and smiling. All right.
So you need to go to the tax refunds and then apply for that tax refund. And then now from there, a processing is done. And that's now when you receive your
That would
money.
approximately take how long?
It takes 90 days
90
to process.
days. Oh, yeah?
Yes. 90 days to process. Yes.
Yeah.
And then now after processing, depending on the money that we have, and for sure we have money now, then we pay those refunds.
All right. Well, at least 2020, you said that you had collected more than you probably expected. And so for sure there is money.
Yes, so there's money to pay refunds. So apply for the refunds if it's due. But there's also something else that I wish to state. It's not always when we are in credit position that it means we have money that we need to be paid.
Okay.
What if you did the computations wrong? What if you have entered a figure incorrectly?
All right.
So you see, you may be saying that your salary may be 800,000 and then you end up putting 700,000. And so the computation may have that failure.
All right.
But when you look at the facts on the ground, then we realize you don't have any.
And therefore that can be
refund to
worked out
paid.
so that at least we get the right figures before you proceed to award this
In
refund?
fact, we do that.
Okay.
That's why now there is the 90 days of processing.
Okay.
So that we confirm.
Okay. Well, interesting one right there. We come back to you, Edwin. Allowable expenses. He mentioned something to do with that. I am lost, but I hope to get back.
So if you look at how the income tax is drafted, so we first begin by saying, so we're dealing with Section 5 taxes. So the income tax runs from Section 5 all the way to Section 12, saying different types of incomes and how they're calculated, what expenses are allowed. So for Section 5 taxes, employment income, they're very clear, and it's what Jeff has explained here. You get a personal relief, insurance relief, and pension. Now, for business income, that's where a lot of issues arise in terms of allowable expenses. So the cardinal rule when it comes to allowable expenses that those expenses must be directly incurred for the generation of income. So that means if I am a shopkeeper, I can only claim expenses related to my shop. So one of the challenges we've had, and maybe the commissioner can guide over time, is that by and large, businesses have become impossible to separate from personal life.
Okay.
And I give an example, a current example. There are a lot of shops that are running in estates where someone has converted one of their bedrooms to be their shop where they sell online. So when it comes to clearly demarcating what is business expense and house expense, will be very hard, because when we say that the electricity they are paying is a business expense, classically you would assume that would be the case.
Yeah.
But I think that rule over time has been expanded, stretched, so we're able to get some of these things into perspective. So of course you'll find that by and large there are things that are allowed, like you should, of course, your operating expenses, your electricity, your wages, your rent, those are direct allowable expenses. But then when you come to classify the expenses for purposes of filing, you realize that there are expenses that are called cost of sales. There are expenses that are associated with the profit. And therefore, what businesses and where businesses require to consult is that these expenses, for example, I want to sell sugar.
Yes.
The cost of getting this sugar from the factory to my shop is a direct cost. And therefore, this cost should be subtracted before I declare my gross profit. But then, I will know if I was to subtract it at the bottom, then it would give an inaccurate figure for tax purposes, because it would add up to the gross profit. The gross profit would be inaccurate.
Okay.
So when you separate those expenses that way, then you go back for tax purposes. We always begin by taking the total sum, what you've declared as your net profit. Then we start adding back those expenses that the commissioner will not allow you to deduct. Then we now less those that the commissioner will allow you to deduct. So if we look at section 15, throughout deals with expenses one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. One cardinal principle when it comes to business expenses is that losses are unallowable expenses.
Wow.
So that means if I made a loss this year, in the next year I'm allowed to carry forward my loss and tell the commissioner, you see, I'm still recovering from my loss. Let me settle my loss. And those are some of the issues that are currently going on in the challenge against minimum tax.
Yes.
And coincidentally I happen to be in that case, and I think those are some of the questions we're trying to ask. What happens then to the right to carry forward losses, for example?
Yeah.
So the regime of allowable expenses is very, very robust, and I must say depends on the nature of income.
Okay.
From income to income, certain expenses are allowed.
All right. Well, that one is a good explanation right there, and gets me to this point of just understanding. Lots of questions arise, especially at this point of COVID-19. I mean, will we have relief, especially the measures introduced to cushion citizens from the impact of pandemic? We also would want to understand on general perspectives, now that we mentioned something to do with persons with disabilities, how then do we know of the categories that could be exempted from actually paying tax? Because that's crucial. We always want to know what loopholes are there so that we don't have to pay you. So it's important that we get to understand. And probably on that one, I loop in Geoffrey.
Okay.
Or you want the commissioner to take us through? She's in a better position.
PWD?
PWDs, what categories are exempted from taxes and all that?
I don't think there is
any
category that are exempted from tax, so long as you had an income.
Okay.
Though there are certain individuals and certain companies that are exempted from tax by and large because of the profession they are in. For now, for PWD, like we mentioned earlier, they're actually not exempted per se, but they're exempted to certain extent, so long as these individuals are registered with the society. Is it, what do you call it?
The Society of Persons with Disabilities.
Yes, the Society of Persons with Disability, which also has clear guidelines on how apparently there is to some extent that you can be allowed by and large on how you affected.
Right.
Okay. So what happens is they allow you to they don't tax what you use on a daily basis to make sure that, because they always say that they are at a disadvantaged position if it comes to business wise and all that. So I find that even cars that they use on a daily basis are not taxed, though if they come into business, like let's say they're in business of buying and selling.
And in this case?
Then in this case, the VAT element applies.
Okay.
Okay? Because now they're dealing with valuable goods. Now they are not exempted from tax. Because as the commissioner says, they are going to earn an income from this, but anything that touches on their everyday improvement, what they've used, is actually tax exempt.
All right. To some bit of the aspect of employment, maybe towards the last lapse, are there cases where you realize that your employer does not remit the payee to KRA, yet the same has been deducted on your salary? What then are you supposed to do? What action should one probably take instantly?
Perhaps I look at it from a consultant's point of view.
Okay. Yes.
Wanja will assist us in terms of what the commissioner has been doing. But you realize that over time, it's now very difficult for you to deduct pay as you earn and not remit. Because remember that anytime pay as you earn is deducted, the taxpayer gets a notification that it has been filed.
Okay.
So when you have cases of non-filing, ordinarily the first stop will be the commissioner's office. The commissioner has the prerogative to enforce collection of this tax from the employer. And remember, the taxes that we call agency taxes, and agency taxes are taxes that you are collecting on behalf of the commissioner. That would have withholding tax, VAT, pay as you earn. It is actually guarded jealously by the commissioner, because the commissioner considers these money that is not yours.
Yeah.
It is money that you're collecting for us. And therefore the commissioner has been very firm in terms of dealing with these collections. But I think the verification is your responsibility.
Right.
In every month of you're paying pay as you earn, the employee should have a responsibility to ensure that they get the notification and they confirm that that payment reflects. And that applies to all the other statutory collections we do, NSSF, NHIF. You also need to have that responsibility to make sure that it is continuously collected. Now, in terms of penalties, the penalties are very stiff.
Yes.
If you look at Part 12 of the Tax Procedures Act, it does detail at length penalties for non-filing, especially where there's a deliberate attempt to either declare or not declare.
Right.
And the penalties are very steep because I think for deliberate mistakes, it's 75% of the tax due is the penalty. So you can imagine that's very steep, depending on what kind of tax you're looking at. So therefore, there are measures to ensure that there's collection. But I think for the employee's point of view, you need to be vigilant enough and get in touch with the commission in case you feel there's a variance. But of course, it's also very nice to also begin with your employer and understand why it's not been filed. Maybe it's an error, maybe it's an issue that can be resolved internally. But by and large, correction would fall to the commissioner's office.
And as it paints, of course, a picture of penalties, it could be very tough. Are there other detrimental, aspects that would appear in the event that you fail to file your returns away from the penalties as we close?
Yes. If you fail to file your returns on time, then when you need a tax compliance certificate, we may not, or the system may not issue you, because actually for anyone who is now compliant, you just go to the system and apply and get it instantly. So if you're not compliant, then you'll have to visit the office, get compliant first, and then now you're able to get the certificate. And you need the tax compliance certificate when you're tendering, and for quite a number of transactions in the country today. So we have the penalties and we have the tax compliance certificate. And I would wish to state, I've seen very many people lose jobs because of the tax compliance certificate. Yes.
All right, so we need to begin.
Yes.
All right, call to action. I think that is one of them. As we come to a close, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. Geoffrey.
Let's not complain that we've not gotten value for money.
Yep.
I'm going to be the KRA's preacher today. Let's file our tax returns. Let's pay taxes. We will hold them accountable in future.
Right. It's easier to tell them we paid, you did not, as opposed to say we did not pay. So I don't know what we say there. All right, Edwin.
For me, I think I'll also echo what Jeff has said, that failure to pay taxes does not resolve the economic problem the country has. I always say, do your part, then complain. And many times you realize that once you've done your part, your business is easier. So spend less time fighting the commissioner, just be compliant. And the last parting shot for me, and I always say it, don't pay more tax than you should.
Okay.
Understand tax laws, understand tax processes, pay that which you should.
Yeah.
And I think processes like the work that Jeff has done here is very, very critical for you to understand what happens if you have side hustle. So don't end up paying more taxes than you should.
Yeah.
The law requires you to pay that which you owe, not that which you do not owe. And Wanja will correct me if the commissioner can collect that which they are not entitled to.
Correct.
So I think in my view, let's build this culture of tax compliance, being tax compliant. And over time, the questions that we're saying it's hard, I think we'll narrow down and say, nowadays actually filing tax is part of living. It's part of life. You have to pay taxes along the way.
Right.
So that's my parting shot, and thank you for having us today.
Thank you so much. I hope you work on your invoice that will be directed to Wanja. And I'm working on mine that will be directed to KCK. Wanja, as we close.
Thank you. You are doing such a good job educating Kenyans. And to my fellow Kenyans, this is the time to file our last year's returns. Let's do it. Let's do it today. In fact, as Edwin says, our Commissioner General says, not a shilling more, not a shilling less. So just pay what you're supposed to pay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm surprised you did not tell us as TV47 that we're doing a good job. You just said, thank you, you're doing a good job. Yo, all right. So anyway,
you are doing a good job.
I will send my invoice, so please make sure that you do send yours. Wanja Wangondu, official from the Domestic Tax Department, KRA. Thank you so much for the great insights. And right next to her, Edwin Thiongo, tax lawyer. Thank you so much from KCK, and equally from KCK tax consultant Geoffrey Nyamaieri. I have to read that one. It was good having you this morning. I hope you have learned something. I might not be able to go through your feedback because of time, but all we say is that remember, you're supposed to file your tax, and so please do that to avoid being on the side or the wrong side or wrong books with KRA, because when they come for you, they don't come easy. Thank you so much. My name is Linda Alela. I get to see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. It's a wrap. Thank you.
To send questions, comments, or suggestions for your favorite TV47 shows, call us on telephone number 0740-047-047 or email us at maoni@tv47.co.ke. You can also write to us on PO Box 2358/00621, Nairobi. You can also drop your complaint or feedback at our offices located at number 10, Ojiji Close, off Ojiji Road, Parklands, Nairobi.